The treble clef is this big curly clef, and it helps us to find this line right here. It targets this particular line, and you can see it does because its little leg here is curling right around this line, creating almost a bullseye or a target inside the middle of this shape. So when you see that clef drawn on the staff, you can see that there isn't just one line here. I'm just going to draw one. There isn't just one line, there are 5 lines, but it's still curling. See, it's sitting on this bottom line, but it's curling around this second line here. So this is the line that this clef is helping us to target. And this line is called the G line, and it helps us find one note. It actually helps us find more than one note, but if we put one note on that line, can you guess what note it would be? Yes, it would be the note G. There is another name for the treble clef, and that is the G clef. So that makes sense, doesn't it? The G clef will help us find the note G. So if I put a note on the first line, this note is not G. If I put a note on the third line, it's also not G. The only place that we can find G is on line 2 of treble clef. Well, the only place we can find treble clef G is on line 2 of treble clef. So this note is very specifically treble G. And let me show you where that is on the piano. So I'm sitting right in the middle here in front of what I will call middle C, because that's what it is. Middle C sounds like this, not like this or this. It's a nice middle sounding C, and I'm sitting here in front of the lock and the brand name on my piano. So on a piano, it's easy to find the middle. On your keyboard, I have a video for that. You can click up here in the corner to find middle C on your keyboard. So I'm sitting in front of middle C, and now I'm going to show you where treble G is. It's just above middle C on the first G that I come to. So this note is called treble G. And now I've written 4 of them. Let's play those. There they are. I've played 4 treble Gs. Now let's talk about this other note I already mentioned, middle C. Middle C is in the middle pretty much of the piano. It's the C that kind of anchors the location here, but it's called middle C for another reason entirely, not so much because of where it is on the piano, more because of where it is on the grand staff. So middle C is actually found right here in the middle of the treble clef and the bass clef. And it's in the middle because, well, I can super easily play that note with either hand. So it's middle C, and it can be written in the treble clef, or more importantly, it can be written just below the treble clef, or it can be written just above the bass clef. But there's a problem here with this note that I've drawn, and the problem is that notes always have to be touching a line. So I could draw a note here, and this one is touching a line. It's touching the very bottom line. And I could draw a note here. This is a line note, and it curls itself right around this bottom line. And I could draw a note here. This one is touching 2 lines. It's in between the first 2 lines of the bass staff. This note isn't touching any line, and that's a problem. So the way we help that out is by drawing a ledger line to extend the staff. So this ledger line has extended the treble clef down below its normal range. I could draw this ledger line here and help the bass staff be extended above its normal range. So in this case, I've written a bass C, and in this case, I've written a treble clef middle C. So both of these are middle C because they're this key, but one of them is pointing toward the right-hand staff, and the other one is pointing toward the left-hand staff. If it's written just as a whole note with no stem, then you have to use your best judgment in this case. Usually the staffs are a little bit farther apart than I've shown here. But I've now shown you the 2 notes that we are learning today. We are learning treble G and middle C. So if I were to see these 2 notes here, I would play this key. On the piano, I could play it with left hand, and I could play it with right hand. And then back to this one on line 2, played 2 notes at the same time. That's because they're lined up. I'll teach you about that in a future lesson, but I just thought I would show you briefly that you can play 2 notes with one hand at the same time if they're stacked above each other like that. Alright, so let's have a look at our lesson materials. Looking at lesson 2, it says here, color in the black keys and then trace over the C and the G. So I'm just going to show you briefly here what I mean. These black keys were not black at all at the moment. They were not colored in. So I'm just reinforcing that my C is going to be found to the left of 2 black keys, and you should already know this information. If you don't know the white key names, just click up in the corner here and you'll find a link that will take you to that lesson. And it says to trace over the C and the G, just like that. Great. And then here is a picture of, what is this called? Treble clef. And it's attached to this staff, and it's helping us find the note that it's curling around. So which line is that? It's not line 1, it's sitting on line 1. It is line 2. And which note lives on line 2? It's treble G. So now it says to draw your own treble G. So I'm going to draw a note right here on line 2. And it says to draw your own middle C. And so here's the middle C. I'm going to draw a ledger line and then the note middle C. Now notice my note is not touching the staff, it's only touching the ledger line. And then there's a diagram here that shows you where to find middle C and treble G on your keyboard. And so it's directly where you're sitting, middle C and treble G. In your printable materials, you're also going to find a set of flashcards. So let's have a look here. It says find these 2 flashcards and place them on your answer mat. So here are the 2 flashcards. I printed the first page with a colored paper so that I could easily see them when I place them on my answer mat. And I'm looking that I've matched them up. So this one I see the treble clef with a note below on a ledger line. So that's middle C. And then this other one, I see I have a treble clef with a note on line 2, and that's going to be treble G. Let's go ahead and set up our mat. So what I'm going to do is I've cut these into strips, and I'm using the ones with the answers on them. There are 2 different answer mats, one with the letter names written and one without. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this C that's on a ledger line and this other C that's on a ledger line. I'm going to place these 2 mats one above the other. And these ones are all on the treble staff, these notes, and these notes are all on the bass staff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my flashcards and I'm going to place them on the answer mat on the note that is the same. So if I have a look, this is a treble clef note and it's on the ledger line, and that would be this note here. So I'm covering up the C. And you can see the 2 black keys here and the 3 black keys here, and then the start of the next pair of 2 black keys. And I have another note, and this one is on line 2, and it matches this one here, so I'm going to place it on the G. And that helps us to see that there are actually 3 more notes that we haven't learned yet, and you can see what they look like. So now I'm going to find them on the piano. So here I go, C and G. And we'll continue to build our note knowledge. Alright, so looking at the next page, you can see the piece called Google Maps. So let's have a look through this piece and see if we can recognize all of the notes that are being used. So here's the first note, and it's written on the second line. And we remember that the second line in this treble clef is the note G, and it's treble G, and there are 4 of them here. Then I can go to the next measure and see that there are 4 middle C's. And then after this line, I have 4 treble G's. And then after this line again, I have 1 middle C. And this one doesn't have a stem. I'm going to hold this one for 4 counts. The next line is the same. I see 4 treble G's, and then 4 middle C's, and then 4 treble G's, and hold on C for 4. Now I'm going to look at the very beginning to see where my hands should go. So if I just magnify this thing here with a little magnifying glass, you'll see it says number 5. And you know that finger number 5 is your pinky. And we know that the top staff is for right hand. So this piece of music is playing with the right hand, reading on the treble staff. So I'm going to place my finger 5 on G, just like this. And then all of my other fingers are going to find a note. Now let me just talk a minute about how we should be touching the keys, because this is super important and it's the hardest thing to learn without a teacher. If you look at your hands when they're just relaxed, they generally are curved in some way. They don't sit like this when they're relaxed. That takes muscle tension. So a relaxed hand has curved fingers. If you simply turn your hand over and place it on the keys, this is a good position to use when you're playing piano. In fact, this is the perfect position to use. You have rounded fingers. Each of these finger pads is touching the piano. That's nice and squishy, will help us make different tone sounds. And then my thumb is playing on its side edge, so you can see that the nail is pointing off to the side here. I'm not going to flatten out my fingers and play with flat fingers, and I'm also going to try not to let my fingers collapse in. We'll talk a bit more about finger coordination and strength in lesson 4 with our finger gym. But let's continue now. We're going to think about this nice rounded finger, and we're going to press into the keys like we're squishing some water out of a sponge. And it's almost like walking when we move our weight from one finger to the next, the way we press into the keys. So we do use weight to play. We're not pressing like this. We're not tapping the keys. We're actually pressing in with weight. This is not the same action you use when you type. This is a different action. This is a heavy weighted action. So you're going to look to make sure you have a wrist that's not hanging down like this. This is bad. And you're going to make sure that your fingers are curved. You could put, imagine a little cage in here with a little chick living underneath your hand. He could run inside his cage and you're not going to squish him. And you're also not going to have your fingers curved too tightly, because that would be uncomfortable for everyone. So we're going to have pinky here on the G, and that means that when we reach the middle C, it's going to be with our thumb on its side edge. So let's go ahead now. We know which notes to play and we know which fingers are on the notes. Let's try to play this piece. So we're going to start here. We've got G, 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 G. So I'm pressing in with my pinky 4 times, finger 5. Then I'm going to go to C, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it switches up to G again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it switches back to C. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you'll also notice that during the performance of that I stopped a lot as I was talking and thinking. Well, that's okay. It's okay to stop and think, but our goal is to not stop at all. Our goal is to keep our beat moving steadily through the entire first line of music, so that when I'm making this change from G down to C, I'm just playing from G down to C without stopping. So you could even practice this, just moving between G and C on a steady beat. We don't have to move that frequently. We get to play 4 of each. So let's go ahead now and try this again. I'm going to count to 4 for each of these groups. Here I go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you might have noticed when I was playing each of these G's that I'm pressing into my finger, and I'm holding the weight up of my hand with that finger when I'm pressing into finger 5. So this next line is the same. Let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. So you should practice playing this piece until you can play it through without stopping on any of the changes. And also, it's a good idea to not practice until you can just do it once without any mistakes, but work on it until you can play it 5 times without making any mistakes. At the bottom of the page, there's some more note writing practice, and I'm calling these landmark notes, these middle C and treble G, because they are like landmarks. They help us, they guide us when we're looking for notes on the piano, and they help us find other notes too, just like landmarks when we're traveling. So here I'm drawing some treble G's, and I'm being super careful not to touch the other lines. This is my landmark treble G. And I'm going to draw some middle C's now. So I'll make my ledger line, try to make it straight, and draw my middle C's on the line. Again, I'm being careful to not touch the bottom of the staff with this note. It has to be on the ledger line, not on the staff. So I'm going to draw some wrong ones now, just so you know what not to do. I'm not going to make my G this big because it's too close to these other lines. I'm also not going to make my G hardly going over the line in either direction. I'm not going to make it too small. And for middle C, I'm not going to make it touch the staff. I'm not going to make my line too far away from the treble staff's bottom line. I'm going to try to keep this distance between the staff and my ledger line about the same as the distance that there already is here between these lines of the staff. Alright, so practice Google Maps using Treble Clef G and C, and in the next lesson I'm going to teach you a song called G, I'm a Drummer, and I'm also going to teach you about the rhythm that we need to count the length of the notes. Alright, so click up in the corner here for complete lesson tracking and all of the other great things that go with this lesson. Thanks for watching, see you in the next lesson.